Airstrikes in Syria overnight following the deadly chemical attack. The U.S. denying involvement in those strikes. The White House saying all options, though, are on the table for our response to their attack. So how should the president handle the country, this country, and that country as the world's leader of the free world? Here to weigh in is former Connecticut Senator, chairman of United Against Nuclear Iran, and former 2004 presidential candidate, Joe Lieberman. Senator, welcome back.
Brian, good to be with you.
All right, Senator, first off, what was your reaction when you saw the chlorine gas attack of Syria? This is almost a year to the day since we sent 57 Tomahawks over there.
Just outrage, horror. I mean, Assad, frankly, is what the president called him. He's an animal. He's a brutal dictator, and his response to his own people asking for more freedom and opportunity was to start killing them, including with gas. So I think one of the big mistakes President Obama made was drawing that red line, saying if Assad uses gas, we'll respond. He used gas, and we didn't do anything, and that just invited a lot of the troubles that have happened since then.
So the president immediately tweeted this out. Many women, if I could see the tweet, I have to get up and get it. There it is. Many women, many dead, including women and children, a mindless chemical attack in Syria. Area of atrocity is in lockdown and encircled by the Syrian army, making it completely inaccessible to the outside world. This is key. President Putin, Russia, and Iran are responsible for backing this animal Assad. So what's your reaction? Is that strong enough?
Yeah. Tough language from President Trump, but in my opinion, absolutely correct, accurate, factual. The world pulled back, including the U.S. under President Obama, let this country go wild. Assad do whatever he wanted. Iran was already in there, increased its presence. They have tens of thousands there, and then Russia saw an opening and moved in. And Assad now thinks he can do whatever he wants with his people, including breaking that line of civil behavior and using gas.
Senator Lindsey Graham told us an hour ago targeting Assad should be on the table. Does Joe Lieberman think so?
I think everything should be on the table, including that. In other words, I see Assad's use of chemical weapons again as a kind of an arrogant either provocation to us or statement to his enemies on the ground there. America's going to leave, and we can do whatever we want to our people. I don't think that's what President Trump meant to say. I appreciate President Trump's outrage at the use of chemical weapons, and now I think we and our allies have to follow up, and it ought to be strong. We should hit their military. Maybe we should do what we said we talked about a long time ago, which is to ground their Air Force.
Absolutely. Let's talk about John Bolton's first day today. What's going to be his impact with this president?
I think, I mean, I'm biased. John Bolton is my friend. I've known him for a long time. He's very smart. He has great experience in the State Department, Justice Department. He has a point of view. I think he'll help the president with a big strategic view of the world, and he's principled. But I think he also understands that he's working for the president. That's the president's right to choose him, but he's the national security advisor. He will form the options for President Trump on different important foreign policy questions like the ones we're talking about in Syria. And he'll give his advice when the president wants it. I think the country's going to be well served, and the president's going to be well served by having a person of John Bolton's experience right next to him.
And if he doesn't get his way, he's not going to call the Washington Post. That'll be key to have some loyalty.
No, he's a loyal guy.
Senator, always great to see you. You look fantastic.
Thank you,
and I hope to see you again soon.